At my retirement party, my son's wife spiked my drink. I switched glasses. I'm Leilani Zion, 62 years old, and I need to tell you about the night I switched 2 champagne glasses at my retirement party, the night I discovered my daughter-in-law was trying to kill me. Welcome back to Auntie Dorothy's Stories. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. Your support truly encourages me to continue sharing these incredible tales with you. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I love hearing from my sweethearts around the world. I'm standing at the bar, wearing the pearls my late husband Thomas gave me on our 20th anniversary, surrounded by 80 guests celebrating my 35 years as a hospital administrator. The venue is gorgeous, the champagne is flowing, and I should be the happiest woman in the room. Instead, my hands are trembling as I hold 2 identical crystal glasses, deciding which one to drink from and which one to hand to my daughter-in-law, Ruth, who's walking toward me right now with that perfect smile. I switch the glasses. Ruth takes the glass. I hand her, raises it for the toast. We drink. And in that moment, watching her swallow whatever she put in that champagne, I don't know, this decision will lead me down a path of betrayal so twisted that 6 months from now I'll be sitting on a beach alone, carrying secrets that would destroy my son if he ever learned the truth. That morning, I woke at 5:30 like I'd done every day for 35 years. I made coffee in my quiet house, the house that used to buzz with life when Thomas was alive, when my son David was growing up. Thomas died 3 years ago. Heart attack, sudden, brutal. One day we're planning retirement together. The next I'm picking out his casket. But this was supposed to be the start of my new chapter. I'd earned this party. I'd earned this freedom. My son David called around 9. Everything's set up, Mom. It looks incredible. Ruth's been here since 7, making sure every detail is perfect. Ruth, my daughter-in-law. When David brought her home 5 years ago, I was thrilled. She was beautiful, smart, and charming. After Thomas died, Ruth was there, helping me sort through his clothes, sitting with me on hard days, calling to check in. She called me Mom, within 6 months of marrying David. I loved her for it. But there were little things, tiny things. The way Ruth's smile would freeze when I talked about my retirement travel plans, how she'd change the subject when I mentioned updating my will. That time she asked, casual as anything over Sunday dinner, exactly how much life insurance Thomas had left me. David didn't notice. He was in love. He saw his beautiful wife doting on his mother. He had no idea that sometimes, when she thought I wasn't looking, Ruth would watch me with cold, calculating eyes, like she was doing math, and I was just a number in her equation. But I pushed it down. Ruth loves my son. Ruth is kind to me. Ruth is family. Until the party. I arrived at 2. It was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows, white tablecloths, centerpieces with peonies. Ruth found me immediately. Leilani, you look absolutely beautiful. You deserve the world today. Perfect daughter-in-law, perfect words, perfect smile. The party swelled. Speeches started. My former boss talked about my dedication. David stood up, and my heart swelled watching my handsome son talk about his mother's sacrifice, how I'd worked double shifts to pay for his college. Around 4, I excused myself to the restroom. Walking back through the corridor, I saw the champagne table near the entrance. And I saw Ruth. She was alone. Everyone else was in the main room. Ruth stood with her back to me, and I watched, frozen behind a decorative pillar, as she pulled something from her clutch. A small vial. Dark liquid. My heart stopped. Ruth looked around quickly, and didn't see me in the shadows. She uncapped that vial and poured it into one specific champagne glass. Then she placed a cocktail napkin next to that glass, marking it. She shoved the vial back, arranged the glasses on a silver tray, and took a deep breath. Then she turned. Saw me. For exactly 1 second, her face went blank. Pure shock. Fear. Then it transformed, and that perfect smile was back. Leilani, there you are. She lifted the tray. Special toast time. I couldn't breathe. My brain was screaming, but I kept my face calm. I walked toward her, watched her hand shift so the glass with the napkin marker was positioned closest to me. Time slowed. 1,000 thoughts raced through my mind. What was in that vial? If I'm wrong and accuse her, I destroy my relationship with David. If I'm right and drink from that glass, I might not wake up tomorrow. Ruth handed me the tray. Take yours, Mom. She gestured to the marked glass, then picked up the other one. That's when I made my choice. I took the marked glass. Smiled. Then, as David called out, "Mom, Ruth, come on, the toast." I turned slightly, switched the glasses in my hands so smoothly, I barely registered the movement, and handed Ruth the marked one. She took it without looking, already walking toward the main room. I followed, my heart hammering. David stood at the center, raised his glass. To my mother, who taught me that dedication means showing up even when it's hard. "Mom, you're finally free to live for yourself. We love you." Everyone raised their glasses. To Leilani. We drank. I pretended to sip, barely letting the champagne touch my lips. Ruth drank deeply. I watched her over the rim of my glass. For a moment, nothing. Then her face flushed pink, then red. Her eyes went unfocused. "Ruth?" David touched her arm. "You okay, babe?" She blinked, shook her head. "I'm fine, it's warm in here." Her smile was wrong, stretched too tight. "Actually, I need to excuse myself." Ruth set down her glass and walked toward the hallway, moving carefully. I waited 30 seconds, then followed. The bathroom door was cracked. I heard her voice, urgent and panicked, pressed myself against the wall outside, listening. "Something's wrong. It's not working on her. It's affecting me." A man's voice on speakerphone, tinny but clear. "What? You said you had the dosage right." My blood turned to ice. I knew that voice. "She switched the glasses somehow, Marcus." Ruth's voice cracked. "I don't know how. What do I do?" Marcus Holbrook, Thomas's business partner. The man who disappeared 6 months after Thomas's funeral, took $200,000 from their company accounts and vanished. "Get out of there," Marcus commanded. "The plan's dead. But we need that life insurance money now. The debts, Marcus, the debts are crushing me." She stopped talking. I'd made a sound, a sharp intake of breath. The bathroom door swung open. Ruth stood there, mascara smudged, face blotchy, phone still in her hand. She looked at me. I looked at her. "How much did you hear?" Her voice was small, broken. "All of it." Ruth's legs buckled. She grabbed the doorframe. The phone clattered to the floor. "Please," she whispered. "Please, Leilani, let me explain." "Explain?" I stepped closer, keeping my voice low. "Explain how you tried to poison me? Explain why you're talking to Marcus Holbrook, the man who stole from my dead husband. Explain why you just mentioned life insurance money?" Ruth slid down the wall, sitting on the bathroom floor in her $300 dress, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't want to. Marcus, he made me," he said. "Start from the beginning," I said, my voice cold, hard. "And don't you dare lie to me again." She talked. "God help me," she talked, and with every word, my world cracked. "It started 18 months ago. Ruth met Marcus at a marketing conference in Chicago. They got drinks, they got close. Marcus recognized her last name, asked about Thomas, about the family. Ruth, tipsy and stupid, mentioned that Thomas had left me well off, that there was a substantial life insurance policy, that David was the sole beneficiary. Marcus saw an opportunity. He told Ruth about his terminal diagnosis, pancreatic cancer, stage 4. He needed money for experimental treatments, hundreds of thousands of dollars. His assets were frozen from embezzlement charges. But if something happened to me, if it looked natural, David would inherit that $2 million policy. Ruth could convince him to invest with Marcus in a new business venture. Marcus could get his treatment. Ruth could get a cut. "And what would you get out of it?" I asked, my voice like ice. "Besides, blood money from murdering me?" Ruth's face crumpled. "He said David would be better off, that you were old anyway, that David deserved his inheritance now. And I convinced myself he was right." She looked up at me. "You're always talking about travel, about spending money." I thought, what if it's gone before David gets any? What if you spend it all, and there's nothing left for him, for us? So you decided to kill me. "It wasn't supposed to hurt." Ruth sobbed. "Marcus said it would trigger a heart attack, that it would look natural, that you'd just go to sleep. You wouldn't suffer." "How generous." I crouched down to eye level. "You made sure my murder would be comfortable." "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please don't tell David." The bathroom door opened. A colleague walked in, stopped. "Leilani, is everything okay?" I stood, smoothed my dress, transformed my face. "Fine, Susan. Ruth just had too much champagne. I'll take care of her." Susan nodded uncertainly and backed out. "Get up." I grabbed Ruth's arm. hauled her to her feet. You're going to fix your makeup. Then you're going back to that party, and you're going to smile and play the perfect daughter-in-law for 2 more hours while I figure out what to do with you. You're not calling the police? Not yet, I met her eyes in the mirror. But Ruth, you're going to give me your phone. You're going to tell me everything. And if you run, if you warn Marcus, if you say one word to David before I'm ready, I will bury you so deep you'll never see daylight again. Do you understand? She understood. We went back to the party. Ruth fixed her face, clung to David's arm, while I accepted congratulations and cut my cake. I played my part perfectly, the happy retiree, while my mind raced. I had Ruth's phone in my purse. I had her confession on a voice memo I'd recorded. I had leverage. The party ended around 8. David hugged me goodbye, said Ruth wasn't feeling well, probably overdid it on the champagne. I hugged him back, my sweet oblivious son, and wondered how I was going to protect him from the truth. Ruth and I locked eyes over his shoulder. Hers were pleading, mine were stone. That night, alone in my house, I sat at my kitchen table with Ruth's phone. I scrolled through months of messages between her and Marcus. What I found made my stomach turn. The affair wasn't just business, it was real. Passionate messages, photos I wished I could unsee, promises of a future together. Marcus telling Ruth he loved her. Ruth telling Marcus she was going to leave David eventually, once they had the money, once enough time had passed after my death that it wouldn't look suspicious. They had it all planned. Kill Leilani, make it look natural. David inherits. Ruth suggests he invest with Marcus. Marcus gets his treatment. If he survives, he and Ruth run away together. If he doesn't, Ruth still gets her cut. Either way, I was dead and David was left with nothing. But there was something else in those messages that made my hands shake. Marcus wasn't just sick, he was desperate, erratic, drowning in debt. He'd borrowed money from dangerous people. In one message from 2 weeks ago, he told Ruth that if she backed out, he'd tell David everything anyway. He'd destroy Ruth just to watch her burn. Ruth hadn't just been greedy, she'd been trapped. But that didn't excuse what she tried to do. That didn't erase the image of her pouring poison into my champagne glass. I scrolled further. Found messages from 3 weeks ago that stopped me cold. Ruth, I think I might be pregnant. Marcus, are you sure? Ruth, not yet, taking a test tomorrow. If I am, we need to move up the timeline. Marcus, whose is it? Ruth, I don't know. Could be David's, could be yours. Marcus, if it's mine, you can't tell David, ever. Ruth. I know. Pregnant. Ruth was pregnant. With a baby that might not even be my son's. I closed the phone, sat in the dark, and I made a decision. Some truths destroy people. Some truths are kindnesses kept hidden. Sitting there at 3 a.m. with Ruth's secrets in my hands, I decided that David didn't need to know everything. He didn't need to know his wife tried to kill his mother. He didn't need to know about the affair. He didn't need to know about the baby's paternity question. He just needed to be free of Ruth. The next morning, I drove to the hospital where Ruth had been admitted for observation. David had texted around midnight saying Ruth had gotten worse, that they'd called an ambulance, that she was stable, but they were keeping her overnight. I waited until David left to get coffee. Then I walked into Ruth's room. She looked small in that hospital bed, IV in her arm, monitors beeping. When she saw me, she started crying. Before you say anything, I sat down beside her bed. I know about the pregnancy. Her face went white. I know everything, Ruth. I read every message. I saw every photo. I know about Marcus's cancer, the debts, the plan, all of it. And I know you don't know if that baby is David's or Marcus's. She covered her face with her hands. Here's what's going to happen. I leaned forward. You're going to divorce my son. You're going to tell him you've realized you're not compatible, that you married too young, whatever story you can sell that doesn't involve murder or adultery. You're going to do it quietly, quickly, and amicably. Leilani, please. In exchange for my silence about what you tried to do to me, I will give you $50,000, cash. Enough to disappear. Start over somewhere far from here. Raise that baby alone, or make whatever choice you need to make. But you will never, ever, tell David about any of this. Not the affair, not the murder plot, not the pregnancy question, nothing. Ruth stared at me. Why would you give me money? Because David loves you. My voice cracked for the first time. Because if I send you to prison, it destroys him. If I tell him what you did, what you are, it destroys him. My son has already lost his father. I won't let him lose his faith in love too. I'll carry this weight so he doesn't have to. And if I refuse? Then I go to the police with the voice recording of your confession, with the messages between you and Marcus, with everything. You go to prison for attempted murder. Marcus goes to prison for conspiracy, and David learns that his wife is a monster. Your choice. Ruth closed her eyes. Tears leaked from the corners. When do I have to decide? Now. She opened her eyes. Okay. Okay, I'll do it. I'll divorce him. I'll take the money. I'll disappear. Just please don't tell him the real reason. Let him think I'm weak, not evil. You are weak. I stood up. But I'm going to let him believe. You're just confused. It's the last gift I'll ever give you. Ruth kept her word. 2 weeks after the party, she sat David down and told him she wanted a divorce. David called me afterward, crying. I don't understand, Mom. His voice was broken, raw. She said we're not right for each other, that she married me for the wrong reasons. What does that even mean? I held the phone and lied to my son. Sometimes people grow apart, sweetheart. Sometimes marriage isn't what we thought it would be. But everything was fine. Just last month we were talking about trying for a baby. My stomach clenched. That baby was probably already growing inside Ruth, and David would never know. People hide things, David. Sometimes the person we think we know is someone completely different underneath. He came to my house that night. I held him while he cried on my couch, this grown man reduced to heartbreak, and I thought about telling him everything. I thought about how the truth would feel, how he'd hurt differently if he knew what Ruth really was. But I kept quiet. Because I knew David would blame himself, would think he'd missed signs, would question every moment of his marriage. The truth would poison not just his past, but his ability to trust in the future. The lie I was telling him would let him heal. Ruth filed for divorce the next day. It took 6 weeks to be finalized. No fault, quick, clean. Ruth signed away any claim to David's future inheritance, took nothing but her personal belongings. David thought she was being generous. I knew she was taking the deal. The day after the divorce was final, I met Ruth in a parking garage downtown. I handed her an envelope with $50,000 in cash. She handed me a signed affidavit stating she would never contact David or me again, would never reveal what happened at the retirement party, and would move at least 500 miles away. Where will you go? I asked. Not because I cared, but because I needed to know she'd be far from my son. Oregon, maybe Portland, somewhere I can start over. She looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something like genuine remorse. I really am sorry, Leilani. I know you don't believe me, but I am. I don't care if you're sorry. I stepped back. I care that you're gone. That baby, whether it's David's or Marcus's, you raise it far away from here. You make it a good person. You don't poison it with your choices. That's how you apologize. Ruth nodded, put the envelope in her bag, and walked away. I watched her go and felt nothing. No satisfaction, no relief, just emptiness. But I wasn't done. There was still Marcus. Finding Marcus took 3 days. I hired a private investigator, paid cash. The investigator came back with an address, a rundown apartment complex on the south side, the kind of place where people minded their business. I went there on a Tuesday morning, knocked on door 3B. Who is it? Marcus's voice, suspicious. Someone you owe a debt to. The door opened. Marcus Holbrook looked nothing like the man I remembered from Thomas's funeral. This Marcus was gaunt, gray-skinned, eyes sunken. Cancer was eating him alive. He stared at me. Leilani? Hello, Marcus. I pushed past him into the apartment. We need to talk. The apartment was sparse, depressing. Bare walls, second-hand furniture, pill bottles covering the kitchen counter. Marcus closed the door, leaned against it like standing was costing him energy. How did you find me? I'm not senile, Marcus. I'm resourceful, and you're sloppy when you're desperate. He laughed, bitter and harsh. Ruth told you everything. Ruth didn't need to tell me anything. I heard your phone call with her. At my retirement party. After I switched the glasses, she drank the poison meant for me. Understanding dawned on his face, then fear. You. That's how. That's how. I sat down on his couch, uninvited. So now you and I are going to have a conversation about consequences. Marcus sagged into a chair. He looked like he wanted to run, but there was nowhere to go, and he was too weak anyway. What do you want? First, the truth. All of it. Why did you steal from Thomas's company? Why did you target my daughter-in-law? Why did you think murdering me was the answer? He rubbed his face with shaking hands. When Thomas died, the company was already struggling. You didn't know that because he protected you. But we were bleeding money. I took the funds to try to save us. It didn't work. So you embezzled. So I borrowed. I was going to pay it back. But then I got sick, and suddenly I had medical bills on top of business debts, on top of people I'd borrowed from who weren't exactly legal. I was drowning, Leilani. I am drowning. And Ruth? I met her at a conference. She was beautiful, bored with her marriage. Easy to manipulate. His voice was flat, emotionless. When I found out who she was married to, who her mother-in-law was, I saw a way out. Your life insurance policy could solve everything. Ruth could access it through David. I could get my treatment, pay off my debts, maybe live long enough to matter. So, you made her fall in love with you. I didn't have to make her do anything. He looked up at me with hollow eyes. She wanted excitement. She wanted to feel powerful. She wanted money that wasn't tied to your shadow. I just gave her permission to want those things badly enough to act. You made her a murderer. She made herself a murderer the second she said yes. Don't put that on me, Marcus coughed, hard and wet. We all make choices, Leilani. She made hers. And now you're making yours. I leaned forward. Here's what's going to happen, Marcus. I've already contacted the authorities about the embezzlement. They've been looking for you. Your accounts, all of them, they're being frozen as we speak. Every penny you have access to, gone. He went even paler. You can't. I already did. And more than that, I've made sure that every person you owe money to, every shady loan shark and desperate creditor, they're going to know exactly where you are. You wanted to kill me to pay them off? Now you get to face them with nothing. Leilani, please. He tried to stand, collapsed back. I'm dying. I just wanted a chance to fight it. You wanted to kill me so you could maybe live a little longer. I stood up. You were willing to destroy my son's life, to turn Ruth into a murderer, to end me, all for a maybe. Well, here's your maybe, Marcus. Maybe you'll find a way to pay those debts before they come collecting. Maybe you'll scrape together enough for treatment. Maybe you'll survive. But you'll do it alone, broke, and scared, knowing that every day you have left, you earned, by being exactly the kind of man who dies unmourned. His face twisted with rage and terror. Thomas would be ashamed of you. That's where you're wrong. I walked to the door, turned back one last time. Thomas would understand exactly what I'm doing. Protecting our son from people like you. People who see kindness as weakness and family as opportunity. I left him there. Didn't look back. I heard him coughing behind me. Heard him maybe calling my name, maybe cursing. 3 weeks later, I got a notification from the private investigator. Marcus Holbrook had been found dead in his apartment. Apparent suicide, pills and alcohol. No note. No ceremony. No one claimed the body. I felt nothing. Maybe that makes me a monster. Maybe I should have felt pity for a dying man. But I couldn't find it in me to mourn someone who'd tried to kill me, who'd corrupted Ruth, who'd seen my death as a business opportunity. Marcus died alone. That was his consequence, and I slept fine knowing it. The months after Marcus's death were strange. David was slowly healing from the divorce, starting to date again, throwing himself into work. He'd come over for dinner every Sunday, and we'd sit at my kitchen table, and he'd tell me about his week, his new projects, the woman from his gym who'd asked him out. And every time, I'd smile and listen and encourage him, and I'd carry the weight of everything he didn't know. Sometimes he'd mention Ruth, wonder out loud what went wrong, if he'd missed signs, if he'd been a bad husband. And I'd reassure him. Tell him that some things just don't work out, that it wasn't his fault, that he'd find the right person eventually. I never told him about the baby. Never told him that somewhere in Oregon, Ruth might have given birth to a child that could be his. That was her secret to keep or reveal, and I'd made my peace with never knowing. Ruth disappeared completely. No social media presence, no forwarding address beyond the Oregon P.O. box she'd used for the divorce papers. She'd become a ghost, exactly like I'd told her to. David asked about her once, about 6 months after the divorce. Do you think she's okay, Mom? Wherever she is? I'm sure she's fine. I poured him more wine. Ruth always lands on her feet. It felt strange, protecting him from the truth about someone who'd hurt him. But I'd seen what truth could do. I'd seen how it could curdle inside someone, how it could make them question everything. David thought his wife had simply fallen out of love with him. That hurt, but it was a hurt that would heal. If he knew she'd had an affair, tried to murder his mother, gotten pregnant with another man's baby, those wounds would fester forever. So I carried it for him. I carried the knowledge, the weight, the complicated grief of losing someone who was never really the person we thought they were. None of my colleagues knew that I'd nearly died at my own retirement party. None of them knew that the charming daughter-in-law they'd met that night had tried to poison me. I kept that secret locked so tight, sometimes, I almost forgot it myself. Almost. But then I'd be making coffee at 5:30 in the morning, and I'd remember Ruth standing at that champagne table with a vial in her hand. I'd remember the feel of those crystal glasses in my grip, the split-second decision to switch them. I'd remember Marcus in that apartment, dying and desperate. I'd remember Ruth's face when I gave her that cash, the mixture of relief and shame. And I'd wonder if I'd done the right thing. Not about stopping them, that was survival, but about hiding it from David. About choosing to protect him from truth, instead of trusting him with it. Some nights I'd lie awake and imagine telling him everything. Imagine his face as I explained what Ruth had done, what I'd done in response. Would he understand? Would he forgive me for keeping it secret? Would knowing destroy something in him? I never found out because I never told him. I made my choice and I lived with it. David started dating someone new about 8 months after the divorce. Her name was Jennifer, she was a teacher, and she was nothing like Ruth. Where Ruth had been polished and perfect, Jennifer was warm and genuine. Where Ruth had calculated every word, Jennifer laughed easily and spoke her mind. He brought her to Sunday dinner. I watched them together, saw how he looked at her, how she touched his hand when he talked, and I thought, this is why I kept the secret. So he could get here. So he could trust again, love again, without Ruth's poison running through his veins. Jennifer, I said as we cleared dishes while David was in the bathroom, I'm glad my son found you. She smiled, surprised by the intensity in my voice. I'm glad I found him too. He's special, you're David. He is. I squeezed her hand. Just promise me something, don't ever lie to him, even if the truth is hard. He deserves honesty. She looked at me strangely, like she was trying to read subtext. Of course, I wouldn't dream of lying to him. After they left, I sat in my empty house and cried. Because I'd just told Jennifer to give David the honesty I was withholding from him. Because I was a hypocrite. Because I'd killed any chance of my son ever knowing who his mother really was, what I was capable of, the lengths I'd go to protect him. He knew Leilani, the hospital administrator, Leilani the widow, Leilani the loving mother. He didn't know Leilani who'd crushed Ruth's life with cold calculation. Leilani who'd destroyed Marcus with no mercy. Leilani who'd chosen to play God with truth and lies. Maybe that was for the best. Maybe our children should never know everything about their parents. Maybe some illusions need to stay intact. The private investigators sent me one final report 3 weeks after Marcus's death. Ruth had indeed moved to Portland. She'd changed her name legally to Ruth Morrison, her maiden name. She was working at a small marketing firm. And yes, she was pregnant, due in 2 weeks. I paid the investigator his final fee and told him to stop watching her. I didn't need to know anything else. Ruth had kept her end of our bargain. The baby, whoever it belonged to, would be born far from here. Would grow up never knowing about champagne glasses and poison and the grandmother who might have been. That was Ruth's burden to carry now. I'd carried enough. But I kept the file, all of it. The voice recording of Ruth's confession, the screenshots of messages between her and Marcus, the investigators' reports, the signed affidavit. Everything is locked in a safe deposit box at my bank, with instructions that if anything ever happened to me, if I died unexpectedly, the contents should go to the police. Insurance. Protection. Making sure that if Ruth ever changed her mind about our agreement, if she ever came back into David's life with lies, I'd have a posthumous way to reveal the truth. Morbid, maybe, but I'd learned that trust was a luxury I could no longer afford. 6 months after Marcus died, I finally took that trip I'd been planning. The one I'd talked about at dinner parties, the one that had made Ruth's eyes go cold. I flew to Hawaii, checked into a resort on Maui, and spent a week sitting on the beach watching the ocean. David called me every other day. How's paradise, Mom? Are you relaxing? It's perfect, sweetheart. I'd watch waves crash and recede, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. He didn't know that I was thinking about Ruth every time I saw a pregnant woman on the beach. He didn't know I was thinking about Marcus every time I looked at the sunset. He didn't know that I wore Thomas's pearls every single day, touching them like proof that I'd survived. On my last night in Hawaii, I sat on the beach alone after sunset. The sky was that particular shade of purple blue that only happens in the tropics, and I finally let myself cry. I cried for the Leilani I'd been before the party, the one who'd believed her family was solid and true. I cried for David's innocence, for the way he'd loved Ruth fully and been betrayed without ever knowing it. I cried for the woman I'd become, capable of such ruthless protection, such calculated mercy. I cried because I knew I'd made the right choice, and I hated that it was mine to make. The morning I flew home, I got a text from an unknown Oregon number. Just one sentence. "Thank you for giving me a second chance." No name, but I knew who it was from. I stared at that text for a long time. Then I deleted it. Blocked the number. Erased the evidence that Ruth had ever reached out. Because David's healing depended on her staying gone. Because some bridges need to burn completely to protect what's on the other side. I never heard from her again. David proposed to Jennifer 11 months after they started dating. She said yes. They planned a small wedding, just family and close friends, nothing like the elaborate ceremony he'd had with Ruth. He asked me to give a speech at the rehearsal dinner. I stood up in front of 20 people, looked at my son with his arm around this good woman, and I almost told the truth right there. Almost said, "The last wedding I spoke at, your wife was planning to murder me." Almost said, "I've been lying to you for 18 months. But instead, I said, "Love is about trust. It's about showing up every day and choosing each other, even when it's hard. It's about being honest, even when honesty costs you something. David, you deserve that kind of love. Jennifer, I believe you'll give it to him." Everyone clapped. David had tears in his eyes. He hugged me after and whispered, "I'm so lucky to have you, Mom. You've always been my rock." And I hugged him back and said, "I love you more than you'll ever know." It was true. All of it was true, even the parts I wasn't saying. The wedding was beautiful, simple, genuine, full of joy. I watched David kiss his bride and thought about Ruth somewhere in Portland, maybe with a baby on her hip, maybe alone, definitely carrying her own secrets and regrets. I thought about Marcus in his grave, unmourned and forgotten. I thought about how many times since that retirement party I'd replayed that moment, switching those glasses, making that choice. All the infinite ways that day could have ended differently, and somehow we'd landed here. At the reception, when it was my turn, I stood up with champagne in my hand, crystal catching the light, and said, "To my son and his bride, may your love be honest, your trust be absolute, and may you never have to carry burdens alone." I drank, and the champagne tasted like victory and grief and secrets all mixed together. That night, I went home to my empty house, took off my dress and Thomas's pearls, sat in the dark and thought about what I'd built and what I'd destroyed to build it. David was happy. That was what mattered. That was what justified everything. But sometimes, in the quiet moments, I wondered if I'd saved him or just hidden the damage where he couldn't see it. I wondered if the truth was really as destructive as I'd decided it would be. I wondered if my son deserved to make his own choices about what he could handle, what he could forgive, what he could survive. I never found answers to those questions. I just kept living with them. I'm 65 now. David and Jennifer have a daughter, my granddaughter, this perfect little person with David's eyes and Jennifer's laugh. Her name is Claire. She's 2 years old, and she calls me Grandma, and I love her with an intensity that frightens me. Sometimes I think about Ruth's baby, if it exists, if it survived. Somewhere out there, there might be another child, connected to that night, growing up, never knowing about champagne glasses and poison and the grandmother who might have been. Claire will grow up knowing her grandmother survived 35 years as a hospital administrator, that she loved her grandfather Thomas, that she's strong and capable. Ruth's child, if it exists, will grow up with whatever story Ruth tells. We're all carrying something. Every person walking down the street has a story they're not telling, a choice they're not defending, a truth they're protecting someone from. That's what I've learned. That's what switching those glasses taught me. I survived Ruth's attempt to kill me. I destroyed her carefully laid plans. I protected my son from the devastating truth. I watched Marcus die alone and felt nothing. I built a wall of silence around a single night and held it steady while life moved forward on the other side. And I'd do it all again. Every ruthless choice, every calculated lie, every burden I chose to carry alone. Because David is happy, because Claire exists. Because sometimes the greatest act of love is deciding what truth the people you love don't need to know. I'm older now, maybe wiser, definitely harder than I was that day at my retirement party. I travel like I always planned to. I spoil my granddaughter. I have Sunday dinners with David and Jennifer where we laugh and share stories, and I keep my secrets locked so tight they've become part of my bones. David called me this morning. Claire's first words were, "Grandma." He was crying happy tears. "My mom's name is Leilani," I heard him tell his daughter, "and she's the strongest person I know." If he only knew. But he doesn't. And he won't. Because I switched those glasses not just to save my life, but to save his innocence. To save his ability to trust, to love, to move forward without the weight of knowing what people are capable of. I gave him that gift. I gave him ignorance as armor. And I'll carry the truth to my grave. Was it the right choice? I don't know. Some days I think, yes, absolutely, this is what mothers do. Other days I think I robbed him of the truth he deserved, treated him like a child who couldn't handle reality. But here's what I know for sure. I'm still alive, my son is happy, my granddaughter exists. And somewhere in Portland, Ruth is either living with her choices or running from them, but either way, she's doing it far away from my family. That's enough. It has to be enough. Because in the end, we all do what we think is right, with the information we have, and the love we carry, and the fear that drives us. We make impossible choices in impossible moments, and then we live with them. I switched the glasses. I survived. I protected. I destroyed. I kept secrets that would break hearts if they came to light. And I'd do it all again, because that's what love looks like when it's tested. That's what it means to be a mother, not just nurturing and gentle, but fierce and unforgiving when you have to be. Love isn't always gentle. Sometimes it's cold and calculating, dressed in pearls at a retirement party, watching a daughter-in-law drink poison meant for you, and feeling nothing but grim satisfaction that you survived. That's the truth nobody tells you. That's the story nobody wants to hear. But it's mine. And I'm still here to tell it. I'm Leilani Zion. I'm 65 years old. And I switched the glasses. That's my story.